welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato tonight. Anxiety mounts over fuel supply as NNPC shuts the Port Harcourt and Kaduna refineries. Court orders federal government to produce Lieutenant Colonel SABOTAGE on the 16th and 17th of February for trial. Bird flu resurfaces in Plateau State, over 20,000 birds destroyed. And hope rises as two pharmaceutical companies team up to produce a vaccine for the Ebola virus disease. And a deadly attack on a Pakistani university leaves 19 people dead.
And on business news tonight, head of energy sector for the World Economic Forum, Roberto Bocca, advises Africa to boost its electricity policies and regulatory environment.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria Professional Football League club FC Fanyuba signs 6 Brazilian players for the 2015-2016 season.
And from Abuja, I'm Linda Akibe. Lawmakers voice divergent opinions on the 2016 budget as debate on the document begins on the floor of the National Assembly.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has announced the operational shutdown of the Port Harcourt and Kaduna refineries. This is as a result of challenges recorded in supply of crude arising from recent attacks on vital pipelines. The Group General Manager at the NNPC's Public Affairs Division, Mr. Ohi Alegbe, says that the corporation's plants were shut simultaneously on Sunday. The affected facilities include the Bonny Okrika crude supply line to Port Harcourt refinery and the Escravos Warri crude supply line to the Kaduna refinery. The NNPC stated that before the closure, the Port Harcourt refinery was producing over 4.1 million litres daily, while Kaduna was posting a daily petrol production of about 1.3 million litres. The statement noted that the Warri Refinery and Petrochemicals Company is still on stream and producing a little above 1.4 million litres of petrol per day. The corporation, however, gave the assurance that plans are in place to guarantee sufficient supply of petroleum products across the country. Well, 6 million litres of petrol, that's what Nigeria will be losing daily in product supply following the shutdown of the two nations' refineries in Kaduna and Port Harcourt. This next report examines the factors at play.
Can it get any worse? Just when the Ministry of Power has asked everyone to brace up for some drop in electricity supply owing to the recent attacks on the Escravos Lagos pipeline system, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has announced also the shutdown of 2 of the nation's refineries. Only recently, following a 3-month ultimatum to ramp up capacity, the Kaduna and Port Harcourt refinery came back on stream, bringing hope that the nation's petroleum asset is back for real. Kaduna refinery on return to production was until the shutdown, doing about 1.3 million litres of petrol daily. For Port Harcourt, Nigeria will have to sort for other sources to make up for the 4.1 million litres daily production, which has now been halted. The refineries rely on the pipelines for crude supply, and that is being compromised following the attacks over the weekend. President Buhari is sad about this. Affected ministries are sad about this. More so, the nation is being affected either through the cut in power supply or the 6 million litres of PMS taking off the daily consumption of about 35 million litres. Gas remains a critical part of our daily lives. The predictions about the difficult 2016 were largely based on the world economic realities. This is certainly not part of the bargain. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Chief of Naval Staff has described the oil pipeline vandalism in Warri Delta State as an act of sabotage and terrorism and will not be tolerated by the Navy. Admiral Ibok Ete-Ibas, who was speaking at a lecture at the National Defense College in Abuja, explained that the intention of those behind the Delta explosion was not to steal crude, but to damage the facilities. The Navy Chief therefore proposed the establishment of special courts and tribunals to try criminal cases in the maritime sector. Our correspondent Omologon Nadi reports.
that goes beyond just mere vandalism, you know, for the purpose of making gains. But this is absolute sabotage, something that can even be termed terrorism, you know, because if the guys were doing that to derive benefits from the destruction, then one would say that it's vandalism. But what we have there is complete sabotage.
And to look at the impact of the shutdown of the 2 refineries on petroleum product supply, I'm now being joined by an energy consultant, Bala Zaka. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you.
Well, this is not the best of times for 2 refineries to be shut, but it's been done. What do you think this means for supply?
Well, I mean, we all know that, I mean, national asset is equivalent to national security. So anybody who tampers with national asset is threatening national security. So destruction to national assets simply means anybody who is involved in that cannot be said to be a loyal citizen. People who are involved in that can be described as economic saboteurs. You can describe them as economic traitors. They are betrayers. They are even economic vampires. Because you're talking about people who are probably lacking morals. And you can say they are morally bankrupt or are suffering from moral insolvency. We have to say that because we are talking about a time or a moment when we want to restructure our economy. We want to look inwards. We want to make sure we redesign our economic landscape. We want to make sure we Nairanize our economy. And that simply means we want a situation where we can move our crude oil from the wellhead through the pipelines in Naira to the respective depots or the refineries across the country in Naira. Refine them in Naira. Distribute them to Nigerians in Naira. Generate Naira. And that simply means if we can do that internally through internal domestication, even if it is just 10 liters that we are going to save from subsidy import, that alone can free us from what? Exchange rate differentials. So anybody who will want to sabotage national assets like gas pipelines or crude oil pipelines, I mean, it won't be immodest if you describe him or her as an economic marauder.
Well, the intention is to be able to do that, as you've said, but obviously it is not happening. And if you remember, the military were given that responsibility to monitor the pipelines. I mean, we've seen the attacks that have happened. So what are our options right now to be able to, given everything that's going on in the oil market?
Well, when you have lawlessness going on like that, first of all, there are likely intentions to sabotage a country or a government. And probably the intention is to render a country lawless, to render a government irrelevant and powerless. But all you need to do, first of all, is to deploy your security agents. And you have to do something also about your macroeconomic mechanisms. Because we're also talking about a situation now where we all know that we export crude oil for earnings. But in terms of GDP, right, it contributes less than 10%. And that simply means if we can refine and have distillates, which we call refined petroleum products, then that means we are going to enjoy sufficiency. If we enjoy sufficiency, we are going to block the stop gaps. So anything we can do through sharing of intelligence for our security, through enlightenment, and through making sure pipeline integrity and necessary checks and control are there for effective preventive, detective, and compensating mechanisms. Once we can have this deployed, then we can effectively protect ourselves.
All right, energy consultant Bala Zaka, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10 tonight. Well, let's move over and see what's happening in the courts. Now, a federal high court sitting in Abuja has ordered the federal government to produce the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, in court on February the 16th and the 17th for trial. Justice Ademola Adeniyi, in his order, says the court has not excused the former National Security Advisor from being present in court to face the criminal charges brought against him by the federal government. At the resumed hearing of the case, counsel to the federal government, Oladipo Okwesheyi, withdrew the application earlier filed by the government seeking to revoke the bail granted to Colonel Sambo Dasuki. Mr. Okwesheyi, however, filed an application seeking protection of witness against the former NSA. Lawyer to Colonel Dasuki also announced plans to file an application seeking to discharge his client due to the inability of the prosecution to commence trial.
Now that there are no pending applications before the court, that was why we made an application for a date for hearing to be fixed. And the judge has graciously, with the agreement of the counsel to the parties, adjourned the matter for hearing to the 16th and 17th of February 2016. So we believe on that day, barring any further applications, trial will commence.
The defendant was not brought to court against two things. One, he's supposed to be on bail. Two, he's supposed to have gone and received medical treatment. And we understand he's in the custody of the prosecution. That is the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, we've made our points clear in court. This is a very sad situation where you find that orders of court are brazenly disobeyed. But that is for the court to decide on the next adjourned date, as we intend to bring an application to discharge the defendant.
And the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has ordered that the detained leader of the Independent People of Biafra be remanded in prison custody pending the hearing and determination of his bail application. Justice James Toho gave the order shortly after Nnamdi Kanu and two others pleaded not guilty to a 6-count charge of treasonable felony and illegal importation of a radio transmitter brought against him by the federal government. The prosecutor, Muhammad Diri, informed the court that the prosecution has completed its investigation and is ready for trial. Following the prosecutor's submission, the defense team, led by Mr. Chuks Mwama, made an oral application for his client to be transferred to prison custody. And after listening to arguments for and against the application, Justice Soho ordered the accused persons to be remanded in Kuje prison and adjourned the hearing of the bail application to the 25th of this month. In part two, after the break, two pharmaceutical companies team up to produce vaccines against the Ebola virus disease. That's in a moment. To join us again.